Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, while my dogs compete to see who can make the most noise as I record, I'm John Heck with today's Daily Comedy News. Dave Attell spoke to Newsday, and they were curious, hey Dave Attell, what made you make the Comedy Cellar your home base? What's so magical about the Comedy Cellar? And Attell said, for a small room, it's mighty. Everybody has worked there, from Dave Chappelle to Chris Rock to Amy Schumer. I know Amy and Dave are tight there, but when you do a rule of three list and you go Chappelle, Rock, Amy Schumer is just a weird third. I wouldn't expect that. You know, you could say Louis C.K. you could throw in there, for example. Anyway, I digress. Dave Attell said they've all played theaters and arenas, but they return to the Comedy Cellar because it's like putting on a comfortable pair of pants. Not shoes, pants. I like to go on last there because it's the hardest spot. Every comic loves the sound and the staff is awesome. If I can make someone who works there laugh, then I know it's a great joke because they hear so many. Dave talked about being sober and said, I like to work in the moment. The clearer you are, the better you can think quicker. In my opinion, nobody's better at working a crowd than Dave Attell. Dave says, it's really helped me focus, and I think my writing is a little better now. Plus, my performance has gone up a bit because there's nothing to hide behind. You have to just do it. Newsday was curious, how did you develop your signature look of baseball cap, gray hoodie, and black jacket? Attell said, I was broke, short, fat, and bald, so I figured these seem to work. It's what I feel most comfortable in. Plus, I'm not really a looker. Hey, Bill Burr, what makes you laugh the hardest? That, a question from Variety. Bill said, authentic emotion. My favorite kind of comedy is stuff that wouldn't be funny if it weren't happening to me. A long time ago, I was doing a set in New York City, and I'm walking up the street after my set, and the door to this bar busts open, and 10 people spill out. There were 2 guys squaring off, and neither of them wanted to fight, but they had to act like they wanted to. They were both terrified, trying to get the other guy to back down. Now, if you're one of these people, it's really scary. Nothing about it's funny, but if you're me on the other side of the street watching it, it's hilarious. Bill Burr, what's the worst trend in comedy right now? Burr said, I don't tell people how to do things, but what I feel like I should be doing is making fun of both sides. My job is not to pick a side. You come to see me because you want to forget about your problems. Even if I do make fun of a politician, I always make sure I get them both. If I'm going to make fun of CNN, I got to make fun of Fox. I make fun of the whole thing because I don't feel that politicians work for us. They work for the super rich, and they're grossly underpaid, so they're open to bribery. It gives regular people something to get mad at, like with these fires. People are blaming Governor Newsom. It doesn't make a difference. That was going to happen no matter who was governor. They were saying the fire was coming forever. The right set of circumstances, there's nothing we can do. Burr's going to have a big March. He's got that Hulu special, and he will make his Broadway debut in Glengarry Glen Ross opposite Kieran Culkin and Bob Odenkirk. Burr said rehearsal starts in February, but I did have lunch with a few of the guys from the cast, and the ball breaking has already started, so I know it's going to be fun. Variety said, the idea to put you three together is genius. Burr said, if it was a genius idea, you know it didn't come from me. I got in because Nathan Lane put in a word for me. Mass Live talked to Kathy Griffin. They asked Kathy how she feels as a female comedian about the second Trump era. Kathy's answer, quote, somebody's going to shoot me. Some lunatic's going to get in there and shoot me on stage, and I'm going to be a martyr, which is my real dream. So, you know, if I get shot, first of all, don't shoot my face off, like shoot me in the arm. Then I want a long martyr period where they write a docuseries about me, and then young comedians are seen crying at my bedside. And then, you know, since he says we're not going to have elections anymore, just take me out at that point. Unquote. And that's an interesting quote there. Kathy continued, let me tell you something, J.D. Vance isn't going to be any better, so we need to be worried about the whole line of Succession. In fact, I would feel safer with the cast of the series Succession than our actual line of Succession. Sorry, that's an obscure reference of a now-canceled series, but your readers will get it if they're good and over 60, which is what I hope. Kathy then went on to praise newspaper readers and said, let me tell you something. Traditional media still sells tickets. I can do 50,000 effing podcasts, and those criminals have me sit there interviewing me for 2 hours, and then you never know who's going to see it. You never know when it's going to air. Good old newspapers. I still do drive time radio, morning radio, afternoon radio. Some markets even have local TV. But look, I want a little credit because I was literally on the no-fly list. The Interpol list, which is the international version of the no-fly list, and the Five Eyes list, which is the Terror Watch list. No comedian in history has ever been on those lists. They were held to a different standard. I'm not putting myself in the class of the great George Carlin or the great Lenny Bruce, but even those guys were only hassled by local PD. I have the feds knocking at my door multiple times a week. The feds! And they don't F around. They were dying to arrest me. They were looking. They want to know if I had weapons. They want to know if I had made travel plans. Like, if I'm going to fly to D.C., waste that money, climb over the fence of the White House with a machete, look like Kathy Griffin, which unfortunately I still do. Or maybe you convince a few people it was Reba, but I'd hate to do that to Reba because I just love her. And then they're supposed to believe that I just broke into the White House and chopped his head off? I mean, the fact that that picture lives on is half comical and half tragic, and that's where PTSD comes in, the intersection of comedy and tragedy. Josh Wolf told the Minneapolis Star-Tribune how he was introduced to comedy. I remember one of my brother's buddies had a cassette tape of Eddie Murphy. We would hide in the basement and listen, laughing uncontrollably. I didn't get all the jokes, but the cadences were funny. One day, the civics teacher at Como Park High School must have had a hangover, so he just played Bill Cosby himself in class. I know Cosby's name is tainted now, but back then I was in awe of his stand-up. It was weird, though. Even as a kid, I thought I could do that. I just knew I had this gift. I just didn't know it was a viable job. The Masulian asked David Cross what it's been like watching comedy evolve. Cross said, like all change everywhere. Some of it's for the better, some for the worse. I'm glad there are more opportunities for comedians to get their work out there, but at the same time, I think there's kind of a craft involved that's missing. You're not going to learn your craft by doing stuff on TikTok and then blowing up and then selling out arenas. It's just different. There's always going to be that kind of thing, but I certainly don't subscribe to the cancel culture BS of all those millionaires whining about how they can't say things anymore. It's laughable. David Cross, what comic should we be on the lookout for? Cross said, well, Sean Patton, my opener, is a brilliant comic who's great, fearless, clever. Shane Torres, Robbie Hoffman. There's this kind of clown, Natalie Palamides. Her shows are amazing and brilliant. Yes, I highly agree. Jacqueline Novak and this girl, Carly Maruli. People you might not have heard of, but they're all worth checking out. NewCityStage.com caught up with Jake Johansson, who's been doing this for 40 years now. He won the 11th annual San Francisco International Comedy Competition back in 1986. That spotlight got Bob Newhart to name him as one of his favorite young comedians. That endorsement got the attention of David Letterman's producers, and soon Johansson was on Letterman. Jake remembers, I think I was just lucky because right from the beginning, Dave enjoyed my stand-up. And for me, that era, Dave was the new late-night host. So the first time I was on in 1987 was just such a big deal to be on it. 1987 Letterman. Now, I got to check with Mike, who hosts the Letterman pod. Mike, if you're listening, hit me on the side. I feel like, if we really graph out Letterman, I feel like the peak of Letterman was before 1987. Peak Letterman to me is the original-ish, the very low-key intro with all the neon signs turning off. And I feel like by 1987, we were onto the more show-busy open, and it was already starting to become the earliest days of establishment Letterman, and we had left behind that early period of it's 12:30, nobody's watching. I digress. Johansson said, I was on at least once a year, sometimes 3 times a year, all the way till he stopped doing the show in 2014. It was an amazing connection for me, and I was lucky to have such a supportive fan in such a powerful position. That sometimes have me on for his birthday week because he liked me, but one of my favorite Letterman appearances was when I got to be on the show with Bob Newhart. I got to meet him in person and thank him for promoting me all those years ago. Chloe Hilliard was on Vulture's list of comedians you should know. They asked her what comedy hill should die on, and she said, stop with all the viral crowd work moments. It's giving harassment. Setting up cameras and pointing at the audience sets off a domino effect of bad behaviors in the comedy club. The comedian isn't bringing their A game and is relying on the audience to do the heavy lifting. The audience gets entitled and expects to be the center of attention. At the end of the experience, there's a one joke or moment you walk away with the feeling of, wow, that was an amazing experience. No one is retelling your crowd work riff to their friends. Stop being lazy. Love it. I want to stand up and applaud. And that is your comedy news for today. If you enjoy the program, tell a friend about it. They might like it too. If you like talking about such things, join us in the Facebook group. It is Daily Comedy News Podcast Group. Hope to see you there. You'll get asked a couple questions by the moderators, and thank you, moderators, for helping out with all that. We just want to make sure you're not a porn bot. But if you are a porn bot, why don't you download all 2,000 episodes of this show so I can move up the rankings in Apple Podcast? I mean, in some ways, porn bots can be a good thing. No? Yes. See ya.